During dinner with the Sheikh Billionaire, her phone rang. What the voice said changed his life forever. Emma Carter had learned to make herself invisible. At 26 years old, she moved through the gilded halls of the Azure Room like a ghost, her footsteps silent on marble floors that cost more per square foot than most people earned in a month. The restaurant occupied the 63rd floor of a Manhattan skyscraper, where floor-to-ceiling windows framed the glittering cityscape, like a painting of a world she no longer belonged to. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across tables draped in Italian linen, where men in $1,000 suits discussed deals worth millions while barely glancing at the woman refilling their water glasses. She preferred it that way. Invisibility was safer than recognition, safer than the whispers that had followed her 2 years ago when her world collapsed, safer than the pitying looks or worse, the accusatory ones that suggested maybe she had deserved what happened. So Emma kept her eyes down, her voice soft, her MIT diploma hidden in a drawer beneath bills she could barely pay, and tried to forget that she had once been someone who mattered. The evening shift had been typically exhausting. A tech mogul had snapped his fingers at her like she was a dog. A socialite had sent back her $30 salad 3 times. Emma's feet ached in the required black heels, and her face hurt from maintaining the pleasant, neutral expression that was part of the uniform as much as the crisp white blouse and black pencil skirt. She was counting down the minutes until her shift ended at 11 when Marcus, the floor manager, approached with an expression that made her stomach sink. "Table 12 just seated. VIP reservation. You're taking it." His tone left no room for argument, though Emma wanted desperately to refuse. Table 12 was the most exclusive in the restaurant, a private alcove separated from the main dining room by screens of carved mahogany and frosted glass. It was reserved for celebrities, politicians, and the kind of wealthy that made regular millionaires look poor. The tips could be extraordinary, but so could the demands and the disdain. Emma smoothed her apron and picked up a leather-bound menu, her reflection in the polished silver tray showing a woman who looked older than her years. Dark circles shadowed her green eyes despite the concealer she'd carefully applied that morning. Her auburn hair was pulled back in the required tight bun, revealing the sharp angles of cheekbones that had become more pronounced as grocery money stretched thinner each month. She took a breath, fixed a professional smile in place, and walked toward table 12. The first thing she noticed was the security. 2 men in dark suits flanked the entrance to the alcove, their eyes scanning the room with the practiced vigilance of professionals. They stepped aside as she approached, and Emma entered a space that felt suddenly charged with energy she couldn't name. The table was set for 1, but the presence of the man seated there filled the entire alcove. Sheikh Rashid Al-Mansuri didn't look up when she approached. He was focused on a tablet in front of him, his fingers scrolling through what appeared to be a contract, his expression one of intense concentration. Emma had served enough wealthy men to recognize the type, the ones who treated service staff as furniture, useful but unworthy of acknowledgement. She waited, her hands clasped professionally in front of her, her smile beginning to feel like a mask that might crack. He was, she had to admit, striking, probably in his late 40s, with the kind of presence that came from a lifetime of being obeyed. His black hair was threaded with distinguished silver at the temples, cut in a style that was both traditional and impeccably groomed. He wore a crisp white thobe that Emma recognized as a traditional dress of the Gulf states, the fabric so fine it seemed to glow in the soft lighting. Over it, a black bisht edged in gold thread draped across his shoulders, a garment that spoke of wealth and status. A Patek Philippe watch glinted at his wrist, the kind that cost more than Emma had earned in the past 5 years combined. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Azure Room. May I start you with something to drink?" Emma's voice was steady, professional, giving no hint of the exhaustion that made her bones feel like lead. Sheikh Rashid's eyes flicked up for a fraction of a second, a glance so brief and dismissive that Emma felt it like a physical blow. He didn't speak, simply tapped the tablet screen twice and returned his attention to it. Emma stood there, uncertain, the silence stretching uncomfortably. She tried again. "Our sommelier has selected an excellent. Sparkling water. San Pellegrino. No ice." His voice was deep, accented with the cultured British English of expensive international schools, and utterly devoid of warmth. He still hadn't really looked at her. "I'll have the lamb, medium rare, with the seasonal vegetables. No substitutions. That will be all. Emma wrote down the order, her professional smile never wavering even as something inside her withered a little more. She had once presented research to rooms full of professors and industry leaders. She had once been called brilliant, promising, a rising star in her field. Now she was invisible to a man who couldn't spare 5 seconds of eye contact. She turned to leave, grateful to escape the suffocating atmosphere of his indifference. As she walked away, she didn't see Sheikh Rashid's eyes lift from his tablet to follow her retreating figure, a slight furrow appearing between his brows. There was something about the way she moved, a grace that seemed at odds with the defeated slope of her shoulders, something that nagged at the edges of his consciousness, though he couldn't have said what. He shook his head slightly and returned to his contract. He had a $300 million deal to finalize. A waitress, no matter how intriguing her contradictions, was hardly worth his attention. Emma delivered the order to the kitchen and was checking on her other tables when her phone vibrated in her apron pocket. She normally kept on silent during shifts, but Lily was home alone, and Emma always worried. Her 16-year-old sister was responsible, but Emma couldn't shake the anxiety that came from being the only family Lily had left. Their parents had died in a car accident 3 years ago, leaving Emma to raise a grieving teenager while trying to salvage her own shattered life. She glanced at the screen. Unknown number, probably spam. She silenced it and continued working. The phone rang again immediately. Then again. Emma's heart began to pound. 3 calls in rapid succession was never good news. She looked around frantically, saw that Marcus was occupied with another table, and ducked into the small hallway near the kitchen where staff sometimes took emergency calls. Hello? Her voice was tight with fear. Is this Emma Carter? A man's voice, professional, serious. Yes, who is this? This is Dr. Patel from Mount Sinai Hospital. I'm calling about your sister, Lily Carter. She was brought in by ambulance approximately 20 minutes ago. The world tilted. Emma's free hand shot out to brace against the wall, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. What happened? Is she okay? I need to. Ms. Carter, Lily was involved in a serious traffic accident. She was crossing the street near your apartment when a vehicle ran a red light and struck her. She's alive, but she sustained significant injuries. A fractured pelvis, internal bleeding, and we suspect damage to her spleen. She needs emergency surgery immediately. Emma couldn't breathe. The hallway seemed to be closing in, the walls pressing against her chest. I'm coming right now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Please don't let anything happen to her. Ms. Carter, there's something else you need to know. Dr. Patel's voice took on a tone Emma had heard before, the carefully neutral voice of someone delivering news they knew would devastate. The surgery is extensive and will require a specialized trauma team. Our hospital policy requires payment or proof of insurance coverage before we can proceed with non-life-threatening emergency procedures. The estimated cost is $85,000. Non-life-threatening? You just said she has internal bleeding. Emma's voice rose, panic making it sharp. She's stable for now, but without the surgery within the next few hours, her condition will deteriorate rapidly. Do you have insurance that covers this? Or can you provide payment? Emma's mind raced frantically. She had insurance through the restaurant, but it was the cheapest plan available, with a deductible so high it was essentially useless for anything major. She had maybe $3,000 in savings, money she'd been desperately hoarding for Lily's college fund. I don't have that kind of money. Please, she's 16 years old. You can't just let her die because I can't pay. I'll get the money. I'll work out a payment plan. I'll do anything. I understand this is difficult, Ms. Carter. We'll do everything we can to stabilize her, but I need you to understand the situation. Without payment arrangements, we cannot schedule the surgery. I'm very sorry. The phone slipped from Emma's trembling hand, clattering against the marble floor. She slid down the wall, her carefully constructed composure shattering into pieces. Lily was all she had left. Lily, who was supposed to start her junior year of high school next month. Lily, who wanted to be a veterinarian and still slept with the stuffed rabbit their mother had given her when she was 5. Lily, who was lying in a hospital bed bleeding internally, while Emma stood in a hallway, wearing a uniform that cost more than she could afford, serving men who spent more on a single meal than it would cost to save her sister's life. Ya Allah, la stadium of Kida Aiden, Emma whispered, the Arabic slipping out unconsciously, a remnant of the years she'd spent in Dubai during her graduate research. Oh God, I can't lose her too. The words were a prayer to a universe that had already taken so much. She didn't hear the footsteps approaching, didn't realize anyone was there until a shadow fell across her, and a voice spoke from above, that same deep, accented voice that had dismissed her so coldly minutes before. You speak Arabic. Emma's head snapped up. Sheikh Rashid al-Mansuri stood in the hallway, his expression no longer indifferent but intensely focused, his dark eyes fixed on her with an attention that felt like being caught in a spotlight. She scrambled to her feet, mortified, swiping at the tears on her cheeks. I'm sorry, sir. I apologize. I'll get your meal right away. I just need a moment. What happened? The question was direct, almost a command, but there was something in his voice that hadn't been there before. Something that might have been concern. It's nothing. A personal matter. Please, I'll be right there. Emma tried to move past him, but he didn't step aside. He was tall. She realized, at least 6 feet, and his presence in the narrow hallway was overwhelming. Your sister is in the hospital. She needs surgery. They want $85,000. It wasn't a question. He had heard everything. Emma's professional mask crumbled entirely. She was too tired, too terrified, too desperate to maintain the pretense. Yes, and I don't have it. So if you'll excuse me, I need to get to the hospital and figure out what to do before she... Her voice broke. She couldn't say it. Couldn't give voice to the possibility that Lily might die. Sheikh Rashid reached into the inner pocket of his bisht and withdrew a leather wallet. He pulled out a platinum credit card and held it out to her. Take this. Tell them to charge whatever is necessary. Emma stared at the card as if it were a snake. I can't accept that. Your sister needs surgery. I don't take charity from strangers. The words came out sharper than she intended, years of pride and pain making her voice hard. She had accepted pity before, after Marcus destroyed her, and it had tasted like poison. She wouldn't do it again. For the first time, something like surprise crossed Sheikh Rashid's face. His eyebrows rose slightly, and he tilted his head as if examining a puzzle that had suddenly become interesting. It's not charity. Consider a loan. I can't pay you back. I'm a waitress who can barely make rent. I have nothing you could possibly want as collateral. Emma's hands clenched into fists at her sides, frustration and desperation warring inside her. She wanted to snatch the card from his hand, wanted to run to the hospital and save Lily, but accepting help from this arrogant stranger felt like selling a piece of her soul. Then don't pay me back. Sheikh Rashid's voice was calm, maddeningly reasonable. Your sister is 16. She has her whole life ahead of her. The money means nothing to me. Let me help. Why? Emma's voice was raw. You don't know me. You looked at me like I was invisible 10 minutes ago. Why would you possibly care? Sheikh Rashid was silent for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face with an intensity that made Emma want to look away, but couldn't. When he spoke, his voice was quieter, and there was something in it that sounded almost like pain. Because I once had a sister, and I would have given everything I owned to save her. But I was too late. He pressed the card into Emma's hand, closing her fingers around it. Don't be too late for yours. Emma looked down at the card in her palm, then up at the man who had given it to her. His expression was unreadable now, the momentary vulnerability locked away behind a mask of wealth and power. But she had heard the truth in his voice, the grief that time hadn't healed. She made a decision that would change everything. I'll pay you back. Every cent. I don't know how long it will take, but I will. Her voice was steady now, fierce with determination. I know you will. Sheikh Rashid stepped aside, finally giving her room to pass. Go. Save your sister. Emma ran. She didn't stop to tell Marcus she was leaving. didn't grab her coat or her bag, just ran to the restaurant and out into the New York night, the platinum card clutched in her hand like a lifeline. Behind her, Sheikh Rashid Al-Mansuri stood in the hallway, watching her go, and for the first time in years, he felt something stir in his chest that might have been hope. Or perhaps it was simply curiosity about the waitress who spoke perfect Arabic and refused charity with the pride of a queen. Either way, he knew with absolute certainty that this was not the last time he would see Emma Carter. The game had just begun, and he always played to win. Mount Sinai Hospital's emergency room was a controlled chaos of beeping monitors, rushing staff, and the sharp antiseptic smell that Emma would forever associate with the worst moments of her life. She burst through the automatic doors, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs, and nearly collided with a nurse pushing a cart of supplies. Lily Carter, Emma gasped out. My sister. She was brought in from a traffic accident. Where is she? The nurse directed her to the trauma wing, and Emma ran again, her heels clicking frantically against the linoleum floor. She found Dr. Patel at the nurse's station, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and the exhausted expression of someone who had delivered too much bad news in one day. He looked up as Emma approached, recognition crossing his face. Ms. Carter, your sister is in exam room 4. She's conscious and stable, but we need to move quickly. I have this. Emma thrust the platinum card at him, her hand shaking so badly the card nearly fell. Whatever she needs, whatever it costs, please just save her. Dr. Patel took the card, glanced at it, and something shifted in his expression. He nodded once, sharply, and handed the card to the nurse beside him. Run this for authorization. Get the surgical team prepped. We're going in within the hour. He turned back to Emma, his voice gentler. You can see her for a few minutes before we take her up. Emma didn't remember walking to exam room 4. One moment she was at the nurse's station. The next she was standing beside a hospital bed, looking down at Lily's pale face. Her sister's blonde hair was matted with blood, and there was a gash across her forehead that had been hastily bandaged. Her blue eyes, so like their mother's, were clouded with pain and fear. Emma, Lily's voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry. I looked both ways. I swear I did. The card just came out of nowhere and... Sure, baby, it's okay. It's not your fault. Emma took Lily's hand, careful to avoid the 4-line taped to her wrist, and pressed it to her cheek. Tears streamed down her face, but she forced herself to smile. You're going to be fine. They're going to fix you up, and you'll be back to annoying me in no time. I heard the doctor talking. About the money. Lily's eyes filled with tears. Emma, we can't afford this. Maybe we should just... Don't you dare finish that sentence. Emma's voice was fierce. I got the money. You're having the surgery. And you're going to be fine because I can't do this without you. You're all I have, Lily. You're everything. A sob broke from Lily's chest, and Emma leaned down to wrap her arms around her sister as carefully as she could, mindful of the injuries. They stayed like that, clinging to each other until the surgical team arrived to take Lily away. Emma watched the gurney disappear through the double doors, and then her legs finally gave out. She collapsed into a plastic chair in the waiting room, buried her face in her hands, and let herself break apart. She didn't know how long she sat there. Time became meaningless, measured only by the beating of her heart and the prayers she whispered to a God she wasn't sure was listening. The waiting room gradually emptied as the night wore on. Other families called back to hear news good or bad, until Emma was alone with the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sounds of the hospital. She was so lost in her own thoughts that she didn't hear the footsteps approaching until a shadow fell across her. Emma looked up, expecting a doctor, and froze. Sheikh Rashid Al-Mansuri stood before her, still wearing his formal attire, looking utterly out of place in the dingy hospital waiting room. In one hand, he carried a paper bag that smelled like coffee and food. What are you doing here? Emma's voice was hoarse from crying. You left without eating dinner. I thought you might be hungry. He held out the bag. When Emma didn't take it, he sat down in the chair beside her and placed it on her lap. It's just a sandwich and coffee. Nothing that requires you to sell your soul. Despite everything, Emma felt a laugh bubble up in her chest, though it came out sounding more like a sob. She opened a bag with trembling hands and found a turkey sandwich, a bag of chips, and a large coffee. The smell made her realize she hadn't eaten since her break for that afternoon, nearly 8 hours ago. She took a bite, and it was the best thing she'd ever tasted, or maybe she was just that hungry and exhausted. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for this, for the card, for everything. I don't understand why you're doing this, but thank you." Sheikh Rashid was silent for a moment, his gaze fixed on the double doors where Lily had disappeared. When he spoke, his voice was distant, as if he were seeing something far away. "My sister's name was Amira. She was 22 when she got sick. Leukemia. We had all the money in the world, the best doctors, every treatment available. But sometimes money isn't enough. She died 6 months after her diagnosis." He paused, and Emma saw his jaw tighten. "I was in London closing a business deal when she took her last breath. My mother called me, and I flew home immediately, but I was too late. I never got to say goodbye." Emma's throat tightened. She set down the sandwich and, without thinking, reached out to touch his hand. "I'm so sorry." He looked down at her hand on his, and something flickered in his eyes. "I swore after that day that I would never let business come before people again, that I would never be too late to help someone who needed it. So when I heard you on the phone, heard the fear in your voice." He trailed off, then met her eyes directly. "I couldn't walk away. Not again." They sat in silence, Emma's hand still resting on his. Two strangers bound together by grief and circumstance. Emma studied his face in the harsh fluorescent light and saw past the arrogance and wealth to the man beneath. He had been hurt just as she had. He had lost someone precious, just as she feared losing Lily. In that moment, he wasn't a billionaire sheik, and she wasn't a struggling waitress. They were just two people who understood what it meant to be helpless in the face of loss. "Tell me about her," Emma said softly. "About Amira." And so he did, as the hours crawled by. Sheikh Rashid told Emma about his sister, the little girl who had followed him everywhere, who had been brilliant and funny and kind. He told her about the day they found out she was sick, about watching her waste away despite every treatment, about the guilt that still haunted him. Emma listened, and in turn, she told him about Lily, about raising a teenager while barely more than a kid herself, about the fear that she wasn't enough, that she would fail the one person who depended on her. They talked until the sky outside the windows began to lighten with the first hints of dawn. Emma's eyes were heavy, her body exhausted beyond measure, but she couldn't sleep, wouldn't sleep until she knew Lily was safe. Sheikh Rashid stayed beside her, and at some point, Emma's head dipped to rest against his shoulder. She was too tired to be embarrassed, and he didn't pull away. Instead, he sat perfectly still, as if afraid to disturb her, and kept watch while she finally, briefly, slept. Emma woke to the sound of her name being called. She jerked upright, disoriented, and saw Dr. Patel approaching with a tired smile. She was on her feet instantly, her heart in her throat. "She's okay," Dr. Patel said, and Emma's knees buckled with relief. Sheikh Rashid's hand shot out to steady her, his grip firm and warm. "The surgery went well. We repaired the damage to her spleen and set her pelvis. She'll need physical therapy and a long recovery, but she's going to be fine. You can see her in about an hour once she's moved to a room." Emma couldn't speak. She nodded, tears streaming down her face, and Dr. Patel patted her shoulder before walking away. She turned to Sheikh Rashid, and without thinking, threw her arms around him. He stiffened in surprise, and slowly, carefully, his arms came up to hold her as she sobbed against his chest, all the fear and relief and exhaustion pouring out of her. "Thank you," she whispered against the fine fabric of his bisht. "Thank you for saving her. I'll never be able to repay you, but I swear I'll try. I'll spend the rest of my life trying." Sheikh Rashid's hand came up to rest gently on the back of her head, and when he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "You already have. You reminded me why any of this matters." He pulled back slightly to look down at her, and Emma saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Warmth, respect, and something else she didn't dare name. "Get some rest, Emma Carter. I have a feeling you and I are going to be seeing a lot more of each other." He left then, walking out of the hospital as the sun rose over New York City, and Emma watched him go with the strange certainty that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't yet understand. She had come to the hospital expecting to lose everything. Instead, she had found something she never expected: hope, and perhaps, just perhaps, the beginning of something more. 3 days later, Emma sat beside Lily's hospital bed, helping her sister work through a bowl of Jell-O that Lily insisted tasted like sadness and chemicals. The surgery had been successful, but recovery would be long and painful. Lily would be in the hospital for at least another week, then months of physical therapy before she could walk normally again. Emma had already missed 3 shifts at the Azure Room and knew she was probably fired, but she couldn't bring herself to care. Lily was alive. Everything else could be figured out. She was reading aloud from Lily's summer reading assignment, a novel about a girl who discovered she was secretly a princess, when a knock sounded at the door. Emma looked up, expecting a nurse, and felt her heart skip when Sheikh Rashid entered. He wore Western clothes today, an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than Emma's car, and he carried a massive bouquet of flowers in one hand and a gift bag in the other. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said, his formal tone at odds with the slight uncertainty in his expression. "I wanted to see how the patient was recovering." Lily's eyes went wide. She looked from Sheikh Rashid to Emma and back again, and Emma could practically see the questions forming. Hi, I'm Lily. You must be the guy who saved my life." Sheikh Rashid al-Mansuri. "But please call me Rashid." He set the flowers on the windowsill and handed the gift bag to Lily. "I heard you wanted to be a veterinarian. I thought you might enjoy these." Lily opened the bag and gasped. Inside were 3 books, beautiful hardcover editions about wildlife conservation, and a stuffed snow leopard that was so realistic it looked like it might purr. "These are amazing. Thank you so much." She hugged the snow leopard to her chest, then fixed Rashid with a shrewd look that reminded Emma painfully of their mother. "So, are you, dating my sister or something? Because she's been super weird the past few days, and she keeps checking her phone like she's waiting for someone to call." "Lily!" Emma's face flamed red. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." She has no filter when she's on pain medication. But Rashid was smiling, a genuine smile that transformed his face from handsome to devastating. "I'm not dating your sister. Yet. But I'm hoping to change that if she'll give me a chance." Emma's mouth fell open. Lily let out a delighted laugh that turned into a wince as it pulled at her stitches. "Oh, I like him. Emma, you should definitely date him. He's rich and hot, and he saved my life. That's like the perfect boyfriend trifecta." "I'm going to kill you when you're healed," Emma muttered, but she couldn't stop the smile that tugged at her lips. She looked at Rashid, who was watching her with an expression of amused hope. "Can we talk?" "Outside." They stepped into the hallway, and Emma suddenly felt nervous in a way she hadn't since she was a teenager. She crossed her arms, then uncrossed them, not sure what to do with her hands. "You don't have to do this. The whole flowers and gifts and asking me out thing. You already helped more than I can ever repay. You don't owe me anything." "I know I don't owe you anything." Rashid stepped closer, and Emma caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive and subtly spiced. "I'm not here out of obligation, Emma. I'm here because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that night. The way you refused my help even when you were desperate. The way you spoke Arabic like you'd lived it, not just studied it. The way you looked at me like I was just a man, not a title or a bank account." He paused, and vulnerability flickered across his face. "I've spent the past 3 days having you investigated. I know that's invasive and probably creepy, but I needed to understand who you are." Emma's stomach dropped. "You investigated me?" "I know about MIT, about your research in quantum cryptography, about Marcus Hale and what he did to you." Rashid's voice hardened on Marcus's name. "I know he stole your work, destroyed your reputation, and left you with nothing. And I know you've been working as a waitress for 2 years, trying to support your sister and rebuild your life, too proud to ask anyone for help." Emma felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that made her want to run. "So now you know, I'm not some mysterious woman with a tragic past. I'm just someone who was stupid enough to trust the wrong person and lost everything because of it." "No." Rashid's voice was sharp, commanding. You're someone who created something brilliant, and a parasite stole it because he knew he could never match your genius. You're someone who survived betrayal and loss and kept going. You're someone who works a job you're overqualified for with dignity and grace because you love your sister more than your pride. He reached out and gently tilted her chin up, so she had to meet his eyes. You're extraordinary, Emma Carter, and I want to help you get back what was stolen from you. Emma's breath caught. What are you talking about? Marcus Hale built a company worth $200 million on your research. He's about to sell that technology to a Chinese consortium for $500 million. Your technology, your work, your future. Rashid's eyes blazed with an intensity that was almost frightening. I want to help you take it back. I have resources, lawyers, investigators. We can prove the work was yours. We can destroy him the way he destroyed you. It was everything Emma had dreamed about in the dark hours of the night, when she couldn't sleep, when the injustice of what Marcus had done burned in her chest like acid. But she had learned the hard way that dreams were dangerous, that hope was a weapon that could be used against you. Why would you do that? What do you get out of it? Rashid was quiet for a long moment, his hand still cupping her chin, his thumb brushing softly against her cheek. Maybe I get to see justice done. Maybe I get to watch a brilliant woman reclaim her life. Or maybe... He leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely more than a whisper. Maybe I get to spend time with someone who makes me feel like I'm more than just my money and my name. Someone who sees me, really sees me, the way you did that night in the hospital. Emma's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. She should say no, should protect herself from the inevitable disappointment, from the risk of trusting someone again. But when she looked into Rashid's eyes, she didn't see pity or manipulation. She saw respect. She saw determination. And she saw something that looked dangerously like the way she was starting to feel about him. Okay, she whispered. Help me take back what's mine. Rashid's smile was fierce and triumphant. Then let's go to war. The law offices of Whitmore, Chin & Associates occupied 3 floors of a building in Midtown Manhattan, all glass and steel, and the kind of understated luxury that screamed power. Emma felt desperately out of place in her Target jeans and worn cardigan as she sat in a conference room with a view of Central Park, surrounded by lawyers in suits that cost more than her monthly rent. Rashid sat beside her, his presence a steady anchor, while 3 attorneys laid out a battle plan that sounded more like a military operation than a legal case. The key is proving original authorship, said Margaret Chin, the senior partner, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. We need to establish that you created the quantum cryptography algorithm before Marcus Hale had any access to it. Do you have the original research files? Early drafts? Emails discussing the work? Emma's hands twisted in her lap. I have some things. Notes, early code. But Marcus was careful. He made sure most of our collaboration was done on shared servers that he controlled. After he kicked me out, I lost access to everything. But you have something? Margaret pressed. I have my handwritten notebooks from the first year of research, before I met Marcus. And I have some emails from my MIT advisor discussing the theoretical framework. Emma's voice was small, uncertain. Is that enough? Margaret exchanged a glance with her colleagues. It's a start. We'll need more. Digital forensics can help. If we can get access to Hale's servers, we can examine file metadata, creation dates, edit histories. We can build a timeline that shows you were working on this long before he claims to have developed it. How do we get access to his servers? Emma asked. He's not just going to hand them over. We file a lawsuit for theft of intellectual property and request discovery. If we can convince a judge there's merit to the case, we can compel him to turn over evidence. Margaret's smile was sharp. And I'm very good at convincing judges. Rashid leaned forward, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. How long will this take? Months, possibly years. Intellectual property cases are complex, and Hale will fight with everything he has. He's built an empire on this technology. If he loses everything. We don't have years, Rashid said flatly. Hale is negotiating to sell the technology to a Chinese consortium. Once that sale goes through, the technology will be out of the country, and Emma's chances of recovering it dropped to nearly zero. We need to move fast. Margaret nodded slowly. Then we go aggressive. We file the lawsuit immediately and request an emergency injunction to prevent the sale until the case is resolved. It's risky. If we don't have enough evidence to convince the judge, we lose our chance. But if we succeed, we freeze Hale's deal and buy ourselves time to build the full case. Emma felt like she was drowning. This was real. This was actually happening. After 2 years of trying to forget, of trying to move on, she was about to dive back into the nightmare that had destroyed her life. She must have made some sound, because suddenly Rashid's hand was on hers, warm and steady. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly, his eyes searching her face. "If it's too much, we can walk away right now. No judgment, no pressure." Emma looked at their joined hands, then up at Rashid's face. He meant it, she realized. He would walk away from this entire plan if she asked, would let Marcus keep her work and her future, just to spare her pain. The realization made something crack open in her chest. Some wall she'd built to protect herself from caring too much. "No," she said, her voice growing stronger. "I want to do this. I need to do this. Marcus took everything from me. My work, my reputation, my future. He made me feel like I was nothing, like I deserved what happened. I'm done hiding. I'm done being invisible." She turned to Margaret, her jaw set with determination. "File the lawsuit. Do whatever you need to do. I want my life back." Margaret's smile was approving. "Then let's get to work." The next 3 weeks were a blur of activity. Emma spent hours in the law offices, going through every scrap of evidence she had, reconstructing her research from memory, sitting for depositions where she had to relive every painful detail of her relationship with Marcus. The lawyers were thorough and relentless, and Emma began to understand why Rashid had chosen them. They were building a case that was airtight, a narrative that was compelling, a mountain of evidence that would be impossible to ignore. No, Rashid's voice was sharp, commanding. "You're someone who created something brilliant, and a parasite stole it because he knew he could never match your genius. You're someone who survived betrayal and loss and kept going. You're someone who works a job you're overqualified for with dignity and grace because you love your system more than your pride." He reached out and gently tilted her chin up, so she had to meet his eyes. "You're extraordinary, Emma Carter, and I want to help you get back what was stolen from you." Emma's breath caught. "What are you talking about?" "Marcus Hale built a company worth $200 million on your research. He's about to sell that technology to a Chinese consortium for $500 million. Your technology, your work, your future." Rashid's eyes blazed with an intensity that was almost frightening. "I want to help you take it back. I have resources, lawyers, investigators. We can prove the work was yours. We can destroy him the way he destroyed you." It was everything Emma had dreamed about in the dark hours of the night, when she couldn't sleep, when the injustice of what Marcus had done burned in her chest like acid. But she had learned the hard way that dreams were dangerous, that hope was a weapon that could be used against you. "Why would you do that? What do you get out of it?" Rashid was quiet for a long moment, his hand still cupping her chin, his thumb brushing softly against her cheek. "Maybe I get to see justice done. Maybe I get to watch a brilliant woman reclaim her life. Or maybe—" He leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely more than a whisper. "Maybe I get to spend time with someone who makes me feel like I'm more than just my money and my name. Someone who sees me, really sees me, the way you did that night in the hospital." Emma's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. She should say no, should protect herself from the inevitable disappointment, from the risk of trusting someone again. But when she looked into Rashid's eyes, she didn't see pity or manipulation. She saw respect. She saw determination. And she saw something that looked dangerously like the way she was starting to feel about him. "Okay," she whispered. "Help me take back what's mine." Rashid's smile was fierce and triumphant. "Then let's go to war." The law offices of Whitmore, Chin and Associates occupied 3 floors of a building in Midtown Manhattan, all glass and steel, and the kind of understated luxury that screamed power. Emma felt desperately out of place in her Target jeans and worn cardigan as she sat in a conference room with a view of Central Park, surrounded by lawyers in suits that cost more than her monthly rent. Rashid sat beside her, his presence a steady anchor, while three attorneys laid out a battle plan that sounded more like a military operation than a legal case. "The key is proving original authorship," said Margaret Chin, the senior partner, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "We need to establish that you created the quantum cryptography algorithm before Marcus Hale had any access to it. Do you have the original research files? Early drafts? Emails discussing the work?" Emma's hands twisted in her lap. "I have some things. Notes, early code." But Marcus was careful. He made sure most of our collaboration was done on shared servers that he controlled. After he kicked me out, I lost access to everything. "But you have something?" Margaret pressed. "I have my handwritten notebooks from the first year of research, before I met Marcus. And I have some emails from my MIT advisor discussing the theoretical framework." Emma's voice was small, uncertain. "Is that enough?" Margaret exchanged a glance with her colleagues. "It's a start. We'll need more. Digital forensics can help. If we can get access to Hale's servers, we can examine file metadata, creation dates, edit histories. We can build a timeline that shows you were working on this long before he claims to have developed it." "How do we get access to his servers?" Emma asked. "He's not just going to hand them over. We file a lawsuit for theft of intellectual property and request discovery. If we can convince a judge there's merit to the case, we can compel him to turn over evidence." Margaret's smile was sharp. "And I'm very good at convincing judges." Rashid leaned forward, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. "How long will this take?" "Months, possibly years. Intellectual property cases are complex, and Hale will fight with everything he has. He's built an empire on this technology. If he loses everything." "We don't have years," Rashid said flatly. "Hale is negotiating to sell the technology to a Chinese consortium. Once that sale goes through, the technology will be out of the country, and Emma's chances of recovering it drop to nearly zero. We need to move fast." Margaret nodded slowly. "Then we go aggressive. We file the lawsuit immediately and request an emergency injunction to prevent the sale until the case is resolved. It's risky. If we don't have enough evidence to convince the judge, we lose our chance. But if we succeed, we freeze Hale's deal and buy ourselves time to build the full case." Emma felt like she was drowning. This was real. This was actually happening. After 2 years of trying to forget, of trying to move on, she was about to dive back into the nightmare that had destroyed her life. She must have made some sound, because suddenly Rashid's hand was on hers, warm and steady. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly, his eyes searching her face. "If it's too much, we can walk away right now. No judgment, no pressure." Emma looked at their joined hands, then up at Rashid's face. He meant it, she realized. He would walk away from this entire plan if she asked, would let Marcus keep her work and her future, just to spare her pain. The realization made something crack open in her chest. Some wall she'd built to protect herself from caring too much. "No," she said, her voice growing stronger. "I want to do this. I need to do this. Marcus took everything from me. My work, my reputation, my future. He made me feel like I was nothing, like I deserved what happened. I'm done hiding. I'm done being invisible." She turned to Margaret, her jaw set with determination. "File the lawsuit. Do whatever you need to do. I want my life back." Margaret's smile was approving. "Then let's get to work." The next 3 weeks were a blur of activity. Emma spent hours in the law offices, going through every scrap of evidence she had, reconstructing her research from memory, sitting for depositions where she had to relive every painful detail of her relationship with Marcus. The lawyers were thorough and relentless, and Emma began to understand why Rashid had chosen them. They were building a case that was airtight, a narrative that was compelling, a mountain of evidence that would be impossible to ignore. Rashid was there for all of it. He sat through the long meetings, asked sharp questions that often got to the heart of issues the lawyers had missed, and provided a steady presence that kept Emma grounded when she felt like she was falling apart. They fell into a routine. He would pick her up in the morning in one of his cars, a different luxury vehicle each day, and they would go to the law offices together. They would work until late evening. Then he would take her to dinner at restaurants Emma had only read about in magazines. At first, she protested the extravagance, but Rashid was immovable. "You're working 18-hour days on my behalf." He said over a meal per se that probably cost more than Emma's monthly grocery budget. "The least I can do is make sure you eat well." "This isn't on your behalf," Emma argued, though she couldn't help savoring the perfectly prepared duck. "This is my fight. It's our fight now." Rashid's voice was firm. "You're not alone anymore, Emma. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be." Emma wanted to argue, but the truth was, she didn't want to be alone anymore. She was tired of carrying everything by herself, tired of pretending she didn't need help, tired of being strong when all she wanted was to lean on someone who wouldn't let her fall. And Rashid, for all his arrogance and wealth, had proven himself to be exactly that person. He didn't try to take over or make decisions for her. He listened, advised, and supported, but always let her make the final call. He treated her like an equal, like a partner, and Emma found herself trusting him in a way she hadn't trusted anyone since Marcus. They talked about everything during those dinners. Rashid told her about growing up in Abu Dhabi, about the pressure of being the eldest son in a family that controlled billions, about the loneliness of never knowing if people liked him for himself or his money. Emma told him about her parents, about the accident that had killed them, about the guilt she still carried for not being there, for being at MIT chasing her dreams while they drove home in the rain. They shared their scars and their fears, and somewhere in the midst of all the legal battles and strategy sessions, something shifted between them. The attraction that had been there from the beginning deepened into something more, something that felt dangerously like love. But Emma was afraid to name it, afraid that if she acknowledged what she was feeling, it would all fall apart the way everything else in her life had fallen apart. So she kept her feelings locked away and focused on the case, on the goal of taking back what Marcus had stolen. There would be time for everything else later, if there was a later. The emergency injunction hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late September. Emma barely slept the night before, her mind racing through every possible outcome. If they won, Marcus's deal would be frozen, and they would have time to build their full case. If they lost, the technology would be sold, and Emma's chances of ever getting justice would evaporate. Everything hinged on the next few hours. Rashid picked her up at 6 a.m. Emma had agonized over what to wear, finally settling on a navy suit that Rashid had insisted on buying her for court appearances. She had argued, but he had simply handed her his credit card and told her that perception mattered in court, that she needed to look like the successful scientist she was, not the struggling waitress she'd been forced to become. Looking at herself in the mirror, Emma had to admit he was right. The suit fit perfectly, professional and elegant, and for the first time in 2 years, she looked like someone who belonged in a courtroom fighting for her future. "Ready?" Rashid asked as she slid into the car. He looked devastating in a black suit, his hair perfectly styled. Every inch the powerful businessman, but his eyes were soft with concern as he looked at her. "No," Emma admitted, "but let's do it anyway." The courthouse was intimidating, all marble columns and echoing halls that smelled of old wood and older money. Margaret met them outside the courtroom, flanked by her team, and gave Emma a reassuring nod. "We've got this. Just remember, stay calm, answer questions directly, and don't let them rattle you. You're the brilliant scientist who created something revolutionary. He's the thief who stole it. The truth is on our side." They entered the courtroom, and Emma's heart nearly stopped. Marcus was already there, sitting at the defendant's table with his own team of lawyers. He looked exactly as she remembered, handsome in a polished way, with sandy hair and blue eyes and the kind of smile that had once made her believe in fairy tales. He turned as they entered, and his eyes widened when he saw Emma. For a moment, something like guilt flickered across his face. Then his expression hardened into contempt, and he leaned over to whisper something to his lawyer that made the man smirk. Emma's hands clenched into fists. Rashid's hand came to rest on the small of her back, a gentle pressure that said, "I'm here." She took a breath and walked to their table with her head high, refusing to let Marcus see how much his presence affected her. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she had no patience for nonsense. This is a hearing on the plaintiff's request for an emergency injunction in the matter of Carter versus Hale. Ms. Chun, you may present your argument. Margaret stood, and for the next 30 minutes, she laid out Emma's case with devastating precision. She presented the handwritten notebooks, the emails from Emma's MIT advisor, the timeline that showed Emma had been working on quantum cryptography for 2 years before she ever met Marcus. She showed how Marcus had systematically isolated Emma from her research, how he had locked her out of their shared servers, how he had filed a patent in his name alone despite their supposed partnership. She painted a picture of calculated theft, of a man who had seen brilliance and decided to steal it rather than earn it. Marcus's lawyer countered, arguing that Emma was a disgruntled ex-girlfriend trying to cash in on her former partner's success. He claimed that the work had been collaborative, that Marcus had contributed equally, if not more, that Emma's evidence was circumstantial at best. He was smooth, persuasive, and Emma felt her hope beginning to crumble. Then the judge turned to Emma. Ms. Carter, I'd like to hear from you directly. In your own words, tell me about this algorithm and how you developed it. Emma stood on shaking legs and walked to the witness stand. She was sworn in, and then she was facing the judge, with Marcus's contemptuous stare burning into her back and Rashid's steady presence giving her strength. She took a breath and began to speak. She told the judge about her fascination with cryptography, about the problems she had identified in existing quantum encryption methods, about the breakthrough she'd had during her second year at MIT that had led to the algorithm's core framework. She explained the mathematics in terms a non-expert could understand, but with enough technical detail to prove she knew exactly what she was talking about. She described the months of work, the failed experiments, the moment when everything finally clicked into place. And she told the truth about Marcus, about how he had seemed supportive at first, how he had gradually taken over more of the project, how she had trusted him, because she loved him and believed they were partners. He told me we would publish together, Emma said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. He told me we would build a company together, that we were a team. But the day after I showed him the final working prototype, he locked me out of our lab. He changed all the passwords, filed a patent in his name alone, and told me that if I tried to fight him, he would destroy me. And he did. He told everyone I was unstable, that I was trying to steal his work. He had money and connections, and I had nothing. So I lost. I lost my research, my career, my reputation. I lost everything except my sister. And I've spent 2 years trying to survive and forget. But I can't forget, because that algorithm is mine. I created it, and he stole it. The courtroom was silent when she finished. The judge studied Emma for a long moment, then turned to Marcus. Mr. Hale, do you wish to testify? Marcus stood, confident and smiling. Your Honor, Ms. Carter and I had a relationship, both personal and professional. When that relationship ended, it was painful for both of us. I understand that she's hurt, but the truth is that the algorithm was a collaborative effort. I contributed significantly to its development, and I filed the patent in good faith. I'm sorry that Emma feels otherwise, but her claims are simply not supported by the facts. Then you won't mind if we examine those facts more closely, the judge said dryly. Ms. Chun has requested discovery, including access to your company's servers and all files related to the algorithm's development. Given the evidence presented today, I'm inclined to grant that request. I'm also granting the emergency injunction. Mr. Hale, you are prohibited from selling, licensing, or otherwise transferring the technology in question until this case is resolved. We'll reconvene in 30 days for a status conference. She banged her gavel. Court is adjourned. Emma couldn't breathe. They had won. Not the whole case, not yet, but this battle. Marcus couldn't sell the technology. They had time. She turned to Rashid, and the look on his face, fierce pride and joy, made her heart soar. Margaret was grinning, her team already gathering their materials and talking excitedly about next steps. And across the courtroom, Marcus stood frozen, his face pale with shock and rage. As they filed out of the courtroom, Marcus pushed past his lawyers and grabbed Emma's arm. You're going to regret this, he hissed. I will bury you. I will take everything you have left. You should have stayed invisible. Rashid moved faster than Emma had ever seen him move. He was between them in an instant, his hand closing around Marcus's wrist with enough force to make the other man wince. Touch her again, and you'll discover exactly how much power I have in this city. His voice was soft, deadly. You stole from her. You destroyed her. But that ends now, because she's not alone anymore. She has me, and I promise you, Marcus Hale, I will use every resource at my disposal to make sure you pay for what you've done. Marcus jerked his arm free, his face flushed with anger and something that might have been fear. He looked at Emma, then at Rashid, and seemed to realize for the first time exactly what he was up against. Without another word, he turned and stalked away, his lawyers hurrying after him. Emma was shaking. Rashid turned to her, his hands coming up to cup her face gently. Are you okay? I think so. Emma's voice was unsteady. Did that really just happen? Did we actually win? We won the first round, Rashid corrected. But yes, Emma, you were brilliant. You were strong and honest, and everything I knew you would be. I'm so proud of you. And then, right there in the courthouse hallway with lawyers and strangers milling around them, Rashid leaned down and kissed her. It was soft and sweet and full of promise, and Emma felt something inside her that had been frozen for 2 years finally begin to thaw. She kissed him back, her hands fisting in his suit jacket, and let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe everything really would be okay, that maybe she could have justice and love, and a future that didn't involve hiding from her past, that maybe, just maybe, she deserved to be happy. When they finally pulled apart, Rashid was smiling, and Emma realized she was smiling too, really smiling, for the first time in longer than she could remember. Come on, he said, taking her hand. Let's go celebrate. You just took the first step toward getting your life back. That deserves champagne and the best meal in New York. Emma let him lead her out of the courthouse and into the bright September sunshine, and for the first time in 2 years, the future didn't look dark and hopeless. It looked like possibility. It looked like hope. It looked like the beginning of something extraordinary. And she couldn't wait to see what came next. The next 4 weeks were a whirlwind of legal maneuvering, forensic analysis, and mounting evidence. Margaret's team worked around the clock, and what they uncovered was damning. The metadata on Marcus's files showed that the core algorithm had been created on Emma's personal computer, then copied to Marcus's system 3 days later. Emails recovered from backup servers showed Marcus discussing how to handle the Emma problem with his business partners. Most devastating of all, they found a former colleague of Marcus's who was willing to testify that Marcus had bragged about stealing the work, calling Emma too naive to protect herself. With each new piece of evidence, Emma felt vindication and rage in equal measure. She had been right. She had always been right. But knowing that Marcus had deliberately, calculatedly destroyed her life was almost harder to bear than thinking it had been a misunderstanding or a legal gray area. He had known exactly what he was doing. He had looked her in the eye, told her he loved her, and stolen everything she had worked for. Rashid was her anchor through all of it. He was there for every meeting, every deposition, every moment when the weight of it all threatened to crush her. They spent nearly every day together, and the line between professional support and personal relationship blurred until it disappeared entirely. They were partners in the fight against Marcus, but they were also something more, something that felt inevitable and terrifying and absolutely right. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of depositions, Rashid took Emma to his penthouse apartment in Tribeca. She had been there before for meetings, but always with lawyers and assistants present. Tonight, it was just the two of them. The apartment was stunning, all floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the Hudson River, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than Emma's entire life savings, and art on the walls that she recognized from museum catalogs. I feel like I should take my shoes off, Emma joked, trying to ease a nervous flutter in her stomach. I might damage something priceless just by breathing near it. Rashid smiled and handed her a glass of wine. It's just stuff, Emma. Beautiful stuff, but still just stuff. You're the most valuable thing in this room. Emma's breath caught. They had kissed a few times since the courthouse, stolen moments between meetings, but they hadn't talked about what they were to each other. Emma had been afraid to push, afraid that naming it would make it real and therefore breakable. But standing in Rashid's home, seeing the way he looked at her, she couldn't avoid it anymore. "Rashid, what are we doing?" she asked softly. "This us, is it real, or is it just adrenaline and proximity and the intensity of everything that's happening?" Rashid set down his wine glass and took her hands in his. "It's real, Emma. At least it is for me. I know the timing is complicated. I know you're in the middle of a legal battle, and your life is chaos. But I haven't felt this way about anyone in years. Maybe ever. You challenge me. You see past the money and the power to who I actually am. You make me want to be better, to do more, to use what I have to make a difference. And when I'm with you, I feel like I'm finally where I'm supposed to be." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I trusted Marcus, and he destroyed me. What if I'm wrong about you two? What if this is just another mistake? Then it's a mistake we'll make together." Rashid's voice was fierce. "I can't promise I'll never hurt you. I'm arrogant and controlling, and I'm used to getting my way. But I can promise that I will never betray you. I will never steal from you or lie to you or make you feel less than the extraordinary woman you are. And I will spend every day proving that you can trust me." Emma looked into his eyes and saw the truth there, the vulnerability and the determination. She thought about the past month, about how he had shown up for her again and again, how he had fought for her without trying to take over, how he had made her feel seen and valued and strong. And she made a choice. She chose to trust. She chose to take the risk. She chose him. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's do this. Let's be real." Rashid's smile was radiant. He pulled her close and kissed her, and this time it wasn't soft or tentative. It was deep and passionate and full of promise. Emma melted into him, her hands sliding up the tangle in his hair, and let herself feel everything she had been holding back. Want and need and hope and love. So much love it felt like it might overflow. They spent the night talking and kissing and planning a future that felt suddenly possible. Rashid told her about his business, about the investments he was passionate about his dream of using his wealth to fund technology that could change the world. Emma told him about her research, about the applications of her algorithm that went far beyond what Marcus had imagined, about her own dreams of starting a company that could make a real difference in cybersecurity. They fit together, their ambitions and values aligning in a way that felt almost too perfect to be real. "When this is over," Rashid said as they sat on his couch watching the lights of the city, "when you won and gotten your algorithm back, I want to invest in your company. Not as a favor, not as charity, but as a legitimate business investment. Because I believe in you, Emma. I believe in what you can create, and I want to be part of it." Emma's throat tightened. "You really think I can do it? Build a company, compete in that world?" "I know you can." Rashid's voice was absolute. "You're one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. Marcus knew it, which is why he stole from you. He knew he could never match you, so he tried to take what was yours. But you're going to take it back. And then you're going to show the world exactly what you're capable of." Emma believed him. For the first time in 2 years, she believed in herself again, and it felt like coming home. The status conference came and went. Margaret presented the mountain of evidence they had gathered, and Marcus's lawyers scrambled to counter it. But it was clear to everyone in the courtroom that the case was turning decisively in Emma's favor. The judge ordered mediation, suggesting strongly that Marcus should consider settling rather than dragging this out to a trial he was likely to lose. Marcus refused. His arrogance wouldn't let him admit defeat, and his lawyers, sensing the massive fees they could rack up in a prolonged trial, encouraged him to fight. So the case moved forward, a trial date set for 3 months away. Emma should have been frustrated by the delay, but instead, she felt a strange sense of peace. The truth was coming out. Justice was coming, and she had Rashid by her side. But Marcus wasn't done fighting dirty. 2 weeks after the status conference, Emma received a call from Lily's school. Her sister had been in a fight, something completely out of character for the gentle, studious girl. When Emma arrived to pick her up, Lily was in tears. "They were saying things about you," Lily sobbed in the car. "Horrible things. That you were a liar and a gold digger, and you were sleeping with some rich guy to get money. And I told him to shut up, and this girl said her dad worked for Marcus, and he said you're trying to ruin an innocent man's life. So I hit her. Emma's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Marcus is spreading rumors about me at your school? Not just school. It's all over social media, too. There are these posts calling you a fraud, saying you're making up lies for attention. Emma, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. If I hadn't gotten hurt, you wouldn't have needed money, and you wouldn't have met Rashid, and none of this would be happening. Stop. Emma pulled over and turned to face her sister. None of this is your fault. Marcus is desperate, so he's trying to destroy my reputation again. But it's not going to work this time, because I have proof and I have people who believe in me, and I'm not going to let him win. But privately, Emma was shaken. She called Rashid, and he was at her apartment within 20 minutes, his face dark with fury. He's trying to intimidate you. Try and make you back down by attacking your sister and your reputation. It's working, Emma admitted. I can handle him coming after me. But Lily? She's just a kid. She doesn't deserve this. Rashid was quiet for a moment, then pulled out his phone. He made a call, speaking in rapid Arabic, his tone commanding. When he hung up, he looked at Emma with grim determination. I just called my PR team. By tomorrow morning, there will be a dozen articles about Marcus Hale's history of stealing credit from colleagues. We'll leak some of the evidence from the case. We'll make sure everyone knows exactly who he is and what he's done. If he wants to play dirty, we'll bury him. Rashid, I don't want to sink to his level. This isn't sinking to his level. This is protecting you and your sister. This is making sure the truth gets out before his lies take root. Rashid took her hands. Trust me, Emma. I know how to fight this kind of battle. Let me handle it. Emma wanted to argue, but she was so tired of fighting alone. So she nodded and let Rashid take care of it. And true to his word, by the next morning, the narrative had shifted. Articles appeared in tech blogs and business journals detailing Marcus's history of taking credit for others' work. Former colleagues came forward with their own stories of being sidelined or pushed out after Marcus appropriated their ideas. The social media posts attacking Emma were drowned out by a wave of support from people in the tech community who had their own experiences with Marcus's unethical behavior. Marcus's company's stock price dropped 15% in 2 days. Investors started asking questions. The Chinese consortium that had been interested in buying the technology pulled out entirely, citing concerns about the legal issues and Marcus's reputation. Emma watched it all unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. She had wanted justice, but seeing Marcus's empire crumble was harder than she had expected. She had loved him once. That love was long dead, but the memory of it still hurt. You're allowed to feel conflicted, Rashid said one evening as they watched the sunset from his penthouse. He was important to you once. It's okay to mourn what you thought you had, even while you're glad he's finally facing consequences. How are you so understanding? Emma asked, leaning into his side. Most men would be jealous or dismissive. I'm secure enough to know that your past doesn't threaten our future. Rashid pressed a kiss to her temple. And I'm wise enough to know that feelings are complicated. You can hate what he did and still feel sad about how things turned out. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Emma tilted her head up to kiss him, pouring all her gratitude and love into the gesture. She had never expected to find someone like Rashid, someone who saw all of her, the strength and the vulnerability, and loved her for both. She had thought she was broken beyond repair, but Rashid was showing her that she had just been waiting for the right person to help her heal. 3 weeks before the trial was set to begin, Marcus's lawyers requested a meeting. Margaret was immediately suspicious, but she agreed, and they all gathered in a neutral conference room, Emma and Rashid on one side of the table, Marcus and his team on the other. Marcus looked terrible. He had lost weight, and there were dark circles under his eyes. His company was hemorrhaging money and talent, and the legal fees were mounting. He was, Emma realized, desperate. We'd like to discuss a settlement, Marcus's lead lawyer said, without preamble. Mr. Hale is prepared to acknowledge Ms. Carter's contributions to the algorithm and offer financial compensation. How much? Margaret asked, her tone neutral. $5 million and a public statement acknowledging that the work was collaborative. Emma felt Rashid tense beside her. Margaret's expression didn't change, but her voice was ice. That's insulting. Ms. Carter created the algorithm. Mr. Hale stole it and built a $200 million company on her work. $5 million, and a vague statement about collaboration is nowhere near adequate. Marcus leaned forward, and for the first time, he looked directly at Emma. Emma, please, be reasonable. You know we worked on this together. I'm willing to admit I should have included you more, that I made mistakes. But destroying me won't change the past. Take the money. Move on with your life. Isn't that what you really want? Emma stared at the man she had once loved, the man who had destroyed her life, and felt nothing but pity. He still didn't understand. He still thought this was about money. What I want, she said quietly, is for you to tell the truth. I want you to admit publicly and under oath that you stole my work. I want the patent transferred to my name, and I want you to face consequences for what you did. That's not going to happen, Marcus snapped, his desperation turning to anger. You're going to drag this to trial, and maybe you'll win, maybe you won't. But either way, it's going to take years and cost you everything. Is your pride really worth that? It's not about pride. Emma's voice was steady, strong. It's about justice. It's about making sure you can't do this to anyone else. And yes, Marcus, it's worth it. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Fine, we'll see you in court. And when I win, I'm going to sue you for defamation and malicious prosecution. I'm going to take everything you have, including that rich boyfriend of yours. You're going to regret this, Emma. Rashid stood as well, his height and presence making Marcus take an involuntary step back. The only person who's going to have regrets is you. Because when we're done, you won't just lose the case. You'll lose your company, your reputation, and your freedom. Fraud and theft of intellectual property are criminal offenses, Marcus. We're not just suing you. We're going to make sure you're prosecuted. So go ahead, take this to trial. Give us a chance to destroy you completely. Marcus's face went white. He looked at his lawyers, who suddenly seemed very interested in their notes, then back at Emma and Rashid. Without another word, he turned and left, his team scrambling to follow. The door slammed behind them, and the room was silent. Margaret let out a long breath. Well, that went about as expected. He's scared, which means we have him. But he's also cornered, which makes him dangerous. Be careful, both of you. Desperate people do desperate things. Emma nodded, but she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. She had been afraid for 2 years, hiding and hoping Marcus would just leave her alone. But now she was done hiding. She was ready to fight. And with Rashid beside her, she knew she could win. The trial began on a cold Monday in November. The courthouse was packed with reporters and spectators, the case having garnered significant media attention. Emma wore another suit that Rashid had bought her, this one a deep burgundy that made her feel powerful and confident. Rashid sat in the front row of the gallery, his presence a constant source of strength. Lily was there too, having insisted on coming to support her sister despite Emma's concerns about her missing school. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Margaret and her team presented their case with devastating precision, walking the jury through the timeline of Emma's research, the evidence of Marcus's theft, and the testimony of witnesses who confirmed Emma's version of events. Emma herself testified for an entire day, explaining the algorithm in terms the jury could understand, describing her relationship with Marcus and the betrayal that had followed. She was calm, articulate, and utterly credible. Marcus's defense was weak. His lawyers tried to argue that the work had been collaborative, that Emma was exaggerating her contributions, that she was motivated by jealousy and greed. But the evidence was overwhelming, and Marcus himself was a terrible witness. He was defensive and arrogant, and his story kept changing in ways that made him look dishonest. By the end of his testimony, even his own lawyers looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they returned, the 4 women stood and read the verdict in a clear, firm voice. We find in favor of the plaintiff, Emma Carter, on all counts. We award Ms. Carter full ownership of the disputed patent, compensatory damages in the amount of $50 million, and punitive damages in the amount of $100 million. The courtroom erupted. Emma couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only sit there in shock as Margaret hugged her and Rashid vaulted over the railing to pull her into his arms. They had won. She had won. The algorithm was hers again. Marcus would have to pay her $150 million. And more than that, the truth was out. Everyone knew what he had done. Justice had been served. Marcus sat at the defendant's table, his face buried in his hands. His lawyers were already packing up, clearly eager to distance themselves from the disaster. Emma felt a moment of pity, but it passed quickly. He had done this to himself. He had chosen to steal, to lie, to destroy her. Now he was facing the consequences. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed him. Margaret gave a brief statement about justice being served and Emma's brilliance being recognized. Rashid stood beside Emma, his hand on her back, his expression fierce with pride. And Emma, for the first time in 2 years, felt like herself again, not the broken, defeated woman who had been hiding behind a waitress uniform, but Dr. Emma Carter, brilliant scientist, survivor, and now, finally, victor. The weeks following the trial were surreal. Marcus's company collapsed entirely, unable to survive the loss of its core technology and the massive judgment against its founder. Marcus himself filed for bankruptcy and was facing criminal charges for fraud. Emma should have felt triumphant, but mostly she just felt tired. The fight was over. She had won. But winning had taken everything she had, and now she had to figure out what came next. Rashid had the answer. One evening, he took her to dinner at a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles, nothing like the Michelin-starred establishments he usually favored. Emma loved it immediately. I have a proposition for you, Rashid said over pasta that was simple and perfect. I want to invest $50 million in your company, Carter Quantum Systems. You'll be the CEO and majority owner. I'll be a silent partner, providing capital and advice when you want it, but staying out of your way otherwise. You'll use your algorithm to build the cybersecurity company you've always dreamed of, and you'll change the world. Emma's fork clattered to her plate. Rashid, that's too much. I can't accept that kind of money from you. Why not? You just won a $150 million judgment. You're going to be wealthy in your own right once Marcus pays up, which admittedly might take a while given his bankruptcy. But you need capital to start a company, and I have capital to invest. This is a business proposition, Emma. I believe in your technology and your vision. Let me help you make it real. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You've already done so much for me. You saved Lily. You helped me fight Marcus. You gave me back my life. I can't ask you for more. You're not asking. I'm offering. Rashid reached across the table to take her hand. Emma, I love you. I'm in love with you. I want to spend my life with you, supporting your dreams and building a future together. Let me do this, not because you need me to, but because I want to, because investing in you is the smartest thing I could possibly do with my money. Emma's breath caught. You love me? I love you, Rashid confirmed, his voice soft and sure. I think I've loved you since that night in the hospital when you fell asleep on my shoulder. You're brilliant and strong and kind, and you make me want to be better. So yes, I love you, and I'm hoping you might feel the same way. Emma was crying now, happy tears streaming down her face. I love you too. I've been afraid to say it, afraid it was too soon or too complicated. But I do. I love you, Rashid. You saved me in every way a person can be saved. Rashid stood and came around the table, pulling Emma to her feet and into his arms. He kissed her there in the middle of the restaurant, and the other diners applauded, and Emma laughed against his lips, feeling lighter and happier than she had in years. When they finally pulled apart, Rashid was smiling, and Emma realized she was smiling too, the kind of smile that came from deep joy. So, is that a yes to the investment? Rashid asked, his eyes twinkling. Yes, Emma said. Yes to the investment. Yes to building a company. Yes to everything. Good. Rashid kissed her again, softer this time. Because I have one more question. Move in with me. not because it's practical or convenient, but because I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to come home to you every night. I want to build a life with you, Emma. What do you say?" Emma thought about her tiny apartment with its leaky faucet and noisy neighbors. She thought about Lily, who would need a stable home while she finished high school. And she thought about Rashid, about the man who had seen her at her lowest and loved her anyway, who had fought for her and believed in her and made her feel like she could do anything. The answer was easy. "Yes," she said. Yes to all of it. 6 months later, Emma stood on a stage at MIT, addressing a packed auditorium of students, professors, and industry leaders. She wore a simple black dress and the confident smile of a woman who had fought for her place in the world and won. Behind her, a screen displayed the logo of Carter Quantum Systems, the company that was already making waves in the cybersecurity industry. "I'm here today to talk about resilience," Emma began, her voice clear and strong. "About what happens when you lose everything and have to decide whether to give up or fight back. 6 months ago, I was a waitress trying to forget that I had ever been a scientist. I had been betrayed by someone I trusted, and I had lost my research, my career, and my faith in myself. I thought my story was over." She paused, her eyes finding Rashid in the front row. He was watching her with such pride and love that it made her heart swell. Beside him sat Lily, fully recovered and thriving, already talking about applying to MIT herself in a few years. But then something happened. I met someone who reminded me that I was worth fighting for, who gave me the resources and the support to take back what was mine. And I learned that resilience isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up even when it seems impossible. It's about believing in yourself when no one else does. It's about fighting for the truth, even when the odds are against you. Emma went on to talk about her algorithm, about the applications of quantum cryptography, about her vision for Carter Quantum Systems. But mostly, she talked about the importance of integrity, of standing up for what's right, of refusing to let anyone make you invisible. When she finished, the auditorium erupted in applause. Students rushed the stage afterward, wanted to talk to her, to ask questions, to tell her that her story had inspired them. Later, as Emma and Rashid walked across the MIT campus hand in hand, Emma felt a sense of peace she had never expected to find. She had her company. She had her reputation back. She had Lily healthy and happy. And she had Rashid, the man who had seen her potential when she couldn't see it herself, who had fought beside her and loved her through everything. "Thank you," she said softly, squeezing his hand, "for everything, for believing in me, for loving me, for giving me back my life." Rashid stopped walking and turned to face her, his hands coming up to cup her face. "You gave yourself back your life, Emma. I just helped clear the path. You're the one who fought. You're the one who won. I'm just lucky enough to be along for the ride." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and Emma kissed him back, pouring all her love and gratitude into the gesture. They had both been broken in different ways. Both lost people they loved. Both struggled with the weight of their pasts. But together, they had found healing. They had found hope. They had found love. As they walked off campus toward the car where Lily was waiting, Emma looked up at the buildings where she had once studied, where she had dreamed of changing the world. She had lost those dreams for a while, but now they were back, bigger and brighter than ever. And this time, she wasn't facing the future alone. She had Rashid beside her, a partner in every sense of the word. She had Lily, her sister, and her inspiration. And she had herself, stronger and wiser, and ready for whatever came next. The call that had changed everything had come on a terrible night, when Emma thought she was losing her sister. But it had led her here, to this moment, to this life. And she wouldn't change a single thing. Because sometimes, the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. Sometimes, losing everything is a first step to finding what you really need. And sometimes a single phone call can change not just one life, but two, bringing together two people who were meant to find each other all along. Emma Carter had been invisible for too long. But now she was seen, valued, and loved. And she was just getting started. The future stretched out before her, full of possibility and promise. And she couldn't wait to see where it would lead. With Rashid by her side, and her dreams finally within reach, Emma knew that the best was yet to come. The call had changed everything. But the real change had come from within, from finding the courage to fight for herself and the wisdom to accept help when it was offered. And that, Emma thought as Rashid opened the car door for her with a smile, was the greatest victory of all.